Folks, welcome back to the Crossing Swords podcast presented by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. And your Buffalo Sabres are rumbling and bumbling towards the finish line. But I'm not going to be rumbling and bumbling by myself because I have with me two phenomenal co-hosts, the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Bunt. Bunty, how are you feeling right now? Only a couple more games left in the Sabre season. Where are we at?
I'm feeling pretty good right now. It's always sad when the end of the year comes. Obviously, not happy to see the playoff drought go another year, but they're playing good hockey right now. Am I going to be fooled into believing into next year? We'll see. We'll talk about it a little bit more coming on the show.
Exactly. And we're bringing in a man who is certainly not a fool, says it how it is, VC3. Vinny, how are you doing on this beautiful Sunday night?
I'm doing all right. I'm losing my voice a little bit, admittedly. Maybe too much yelling during the Flyers game or something. But other than that, not too many complaints.
Yeah, and speaking of that Flyers game, Sabres back-to-back Saturday, Sunday, barn burners all around, lose to a bad Flyers team with a new head coach, and then today absolutely blow the doors off, scoring 8 goals against the Washington Capitals. How are we feeling so far with just the craziness that's kind of been this past couple of weeks of we see the best hockey team on ice, Buffalo Sabres being 2 of the top teams in the league, and then giving up 7 goals to the Philadelphia Flyers. Bunty, if you want to get us going here, how are you feeling right now on the Buffalo Sabres team?
So I'm actually feeling a little optimistic. I know a lot of people will say, well, it's garbage time. It doesn't matter. These games don't count. They might not count for the Buffalo Sabres, but they still count for their opponents. And they've played a lot of teams that are battling for stuff currently. You just played the top team in the Eastern Conference today, and you took them down in their own house, scoring 8 goals against a team that I don't believe has allowed more than 5 goals in any game the entire season. A couple weeks ago, you go on the road in Winnipeg against a 100-point team that's only lost 6 times at home all season. You hand them a loss. They have played good hockey. You have Ottawa coming back with Dylan Cousins in a game that means a lot to Cousins, means a lot to the Senators. And you know what? You get a regulation victory. You have Vegas coming to Buffalo with Jack Eichel in the game that clearly meant a lot to Jack and his teammates to the point where they mess up an empty net opportunity because they try to pass it to Jack to get an empty netter, and they lose that game. So I'll say this. I am not going to say, oh, this is going to carry into next year. But I'm glad this team hasn't quit on the season. When things were going bad, they could have easily just called it a season, tanked for one of those top 3 worst records, hoping to get one of those top 3 picks, the top 3 prospects out there. But they kept fighting. And you know what? Ever since Cousins got traded, and I'm not saying Cousins is the problem, I have seen a different identity from this team. They have been sticking up for their teammates, especially goaltending whenever anybody's getting hit. They have been getting in the way of shot lanes, blocking shots. They have been playing with a little bit more intensity. Yeah, too little, too late. I 100% too little, too late. But I will say, like, there is something to that. Like, the fact that this group has said they needed to find their game and that right now they're battling, that does mean something, even if in the long run, who knows if it can really translate to next year or not.
Yeah, Vinny, are you feeling this optimism that Bunty is, portraying out to the millions of people right now?
For the first time, I think no. I think for the last couple of years, I've been willing to lean into that. Hey, this team is still one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest team at times in the NHL. And that conversation we get to have, if you will, now the past couple of years, that often involves us saying, hey, if it weren't for this long losing streak in either November, December, or January, we would be in a playoff spot right now because the team is really playing well in March. And yeah, that it has happened and it's happening again. And each season, I would say that there's a different element of the team that seems to figure itself out late. We had a year where it was the goaltending. I believe that was the case the whole year. When Luukkonen was playing well, the offense just couldn't score goals. And the year before that, we could score, we just couldn't, we would lose games 7-5. And more often than not, you score 5 goals in the NHL, you're going to win. And then last year was, a bit of a special teams thing where we could score 5-on-5 and then couldn't score on the power play. And then we also had a period the year prior, where our power play was unbelievable. Our penalty kill was meh. And our 5-on-5 numbers weren't very good, but we were scoring so much with the man advantage that it was okay. So like all these different things happen over the course of the year. And that obviously happens for every team. But I think for the first time, I'm finally just not willing to think, okay, we have this many puzzle pieces. We just need this other one. I think now I just don't have that much confidence that we're not going to start back up again next October and have some of the things that are going well right now suddenly not working again when it comes time for fall hockey to start back up.
I do want to rebut one thing before Carson speaks. And I agree with you. Like each year, it is something different that they're doing positive. There's another weakness, and we do kind of convince ourselves, well, if they only fix this, the next year is going to be different. And when you have a young team, that is pretty normal because there's always something that you're doing incorrectly that you can learn from experience. The one thing I do want to rebut you, though, is we have this tendency to always say, well, they always find their game in March. No, that's not always the case. Last year, they had a little stretch, but they didn't win more than 3 games in a row all of last season. So, yes, they did play that a little bit better hockey down the stretch, but they were not suddenly playing good hockey late last season. The year before, when they got within 1 point of the playoffs, they were in the playoff race the entire season. It was actually in March when they fell apart and fell behind dramatically, which made them have to go on some unrealistic last 10 game stretch to make it appear like they were in the playoff race when they really weren't the last 10 games of the season. And then before those seasons, the Sabres really were never even close to even being in contention. They were the team that was getting 70 points or 60 something points a season. So I do think there's some fallacies. We always say, oh, the Sabres get hot during March. Like that's not true. It's what we say as a fan base, but it's not really accurate. And the one other thing I would kind of say too is while you are 100% right, like there's always something that we can point on this team where we're saying if they can carry that over into next year. The one thing that has changed with this team compared to previous years was once they got rid of Eichel, Reinhart, Ristolainen, and they got rid of that previous core, it was all about the development of the next group of guys. And what Adams' approach has been the whole time is like, okay, we know Thompson and Tuck are the top line guys, but then it's going to be Cousins, Quinn, Peterka. What is different about this team moving forward compared to the last 2 years is by trading Cousins for Norris, it is essentially Adams admitting that his plan wasn't going to work out, that it was time for a retooling of that plan, getting somebody in that's a lot more talented, that's experienced in Norris. He hasn't even been playing because of it being banged up. And then Quinn, we're not banking on Quinn to be a huge part. If he ends up being good going forward, awesome. That's a bonus. But right now, you go into next year, Quinn's battling for a spot to even be on the third line going into next year. He is not penciled into line 2. And with a lot of the resources right now, I don't think this is really, and we'll get into this later, I don't think this is really like, oh, is this going to carry over? The thought is like, there's going to be some changes this offseason.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to that March thing too a little bit, I was looking at like previous years because I was curious on, are the Sabres like post-trade deadline, post-All-Star break, are they just like the best team in hockey? Since the COVID year, the Sabres have only been a couple games over 500 each of those years after that trade deadline where, I mean, I think maybe it's just us as fans where we know things are done. Like we latch onto that hot streak where they play some good hockey. And we've seen that recently. And I think what we're going to see this year in the offseason, hop in, Vinny, real quick.
Sorry, I just want to do something. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for this. I'm acknowledging my incorrectness. There was one specific season that I just
100%.
blanket said over all of them. Bunty, you're right, and Gatesy, you're absolutely right. I was wrong. To put some numbers behind it for the folks at home, 2022 was the like ridiculous March year. The Sabres were 8-3-3 in March 2022. That was the March that the Sabres were like the best team in hockey, basically. In 2023, the Sabres were 5-7-3. And in 2024, they were 7-7-1. So they were below 500 2 Marches ago. And last March, they were just literally at 500. So, and then you add the extra loser point in there. So, again, that blanket 2022 March is where I was just throwing that over everything. which was
That's doing
incorrect,
numbers in my head
by
as
the
well.
way.
That 2022 March is like those numbers are throwing me off too, because I thought that was just every March that they were, good. But yeah, it's weird with the Sabres, where I think this March compared to other ones for what I'm seeing where the Sabres now is they're playing their best hockey, even like the past couple years when they're being challenged, whether that be Eichel comes in the arena, they trade a core piece in Cousins, that shift happens in their head where they're playing a lot tougher, they're playing stronger, and they're doing a lot of those things right, where they're scoring a lot more goals, they're getting guys outside of Thompson to score. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's not going to be, adding skill, more so changing that culture, which hopefully we're going to see in the summer with a full year of Ruff, that change can happen. And the guy where we're seeing that, I think, happen, at least in the past couple of weeks of being challenged, is that spot there, Jack Quinn. He scored once. They had 3 points today against the Capitals, 2 goals last game. He has 4 goals in his last 4 games. Vinny, if you want to kick us off on the Jack Quinn side of things, of just, is this a flash in the pan, or, him being reunited with Peterka? Are we seeing something there to, maybe this past year isn't, all said and done on Jack Quinn?
I think there's something to be said for him maybe having now the correct amount of time to come back from injury, and really get his feet under him. And sometimes you just need to have one, like, just to see one go through the hoop, to use a March Madness reference. But Quinn, yeah, I mean, he obviously has some bad injury luck over the past 2 years specifically. And now I think maybe there's a part of this that is him having confidence that his body can do what he wants it to do. And I think at the end of the year now, there is a certain element of, now that the trade deadline is passed and we're getting ready to go into this offseason, the team kind of takes up a different dynamic. And Quinn, I think, is maybe playing a little looser, which is his most successful style of play. I'm enjoying watching him right now, and I think that confidence is definitely worth something. However, I think there's also the element of, I would like to know what his time on ice numbers are as of late, because I think that has a little bit to do with it. Not that necessarily negates my point of, now that maybe he's a little more confident, not only in himself, but like in his body physically, because he's recovered, if you will. And I'm assuming that I haven't talked to him to say, hey dude, like, do you feel good? And he's like, I felt the best I've ever felt. Or like, he hasn't said that. I'm just assuming this. But my point being, I would like to know what his time on ice numbers are. And I know that information's available, to see if it's a product of him just genuinely getting more ice time. And when you're out on the ice more, you're just more likely to be in positions to have an impact on the game, whether that be positive or negative. And offensively, he has had a positive impact. So I think that's maybe playing into it a bit as well. And I'll look that up in the meantime and come back to see if I'm right this time, or if I'm 0 for 2 on numbers takes here today.
So I got a lot of opinions on the Jack Quinn situation, and his season has been very disappointing. There's no way around it, but there's a lot of things that I think contribute to it. One, as Vinny just said, he was coming off an injury. Last year, he looked solid when he came back, but that was in a limited sample size. I think number 2, it shows you need good line mates. Like, you need line mates that are going to bring you up. Dylan Cousins is doing better in Ottawa because he's playing with better players. And Jack Quinn, I think we're seeing him having more success because he's not playing with Dylan Cousins anymore. And those are 2 players that neither of them were ready for second line roles in the NHL. They both had the potential of being second liners, and they both had good starts to their NHL careers. But I think we put them on a pedestal way too early. They were too young. They weren't ready. They felt the pressure, and they didn't live up to it. And they kept talking about, we have to be better. We have to do this. We have to do that. You're just not ready. Neither of them were ready. And now you're seeing Quinn, no pressure. The season's basically over. You're not playing with Cousins anymore. You're playing with McLeod, a guy that we're seeing is taking that growth, taking that step forward. And now what is Jack Quinn doing when there is no pressure for him to have to try to score 30 goals and carry the team? He's playing freely. He's playing relaxed. And to the Sabres right now, this is encouraging for him, because you know what? After they trade for Norris, after you see Kulich start putting up some production. Obviously, Benson's been part of the future. You look at Zucker, Greenway. You look at the Sabres' top 9, and you're like, where does Jack Quinn really fit into this future? And it's really not guaranteed. A lot of people were worried about him getting a big money contract going forward. He's going to be on bridges, small bridge contracts going forward, which is going to let him play relaxed, or theoretically, it should be letting him play freely. And let's just see what happens. He could be trade bait. I don't really expect him to, because I don't know what his value would be. I don't think it'd be that strong. But if you can get him to play relaxed and not worry about his situation, this might lead to a better Jack Quinn going forward. And finally, for the first time in his career, not rushing him to be something that he hasn't proven he can be yet at the NHL level.
Yeah, and I think the Sabres have really benefited the past, couple weeks with just putting guys in the right situation and finding some chemistry offensively, when I think Benson going to that top line has been huge for him, where he's just looked like a totally different player, now that he's not, on that third line, kind of hampered by some of his line mates, where he's put in offensive positions and is succeeding in those roles. And yeah, Quinn, like we all saw early in that career, could score goals, and recently he hasn't been able to, but these past 4 games, he just looks different as well, where they're not these, empty netters or pucks just trickling in. We're seeing that return of that confident Jack Quinn again, where him and Cousins looked like ghosts a lot of the nights, where they were just out to lunch. And, I don't know if that Cousins trade was that, hey, you got to figure it out now or you're gone next, and going into that contract year, we'll see what happens. But another guy who's finding that back of the net right now, Tage Thompson scored goal 37 and 38 today, both on the power play as well. He is, scoring more than just power play goals this year. He has been a force 5-on-5. And, I think previous years we've seen Tage just, have that insane one-timer find the back of the net, but he's been the driving force of the offense 5-on-5, power play when they click as well. So what are your thoughts on Tage, kind of quieting? I think a lot of rumors at the start of the year is he going to be that same player we saw a couple years ago? He's not only returned to form, but I think he's taken that step up. What do you guys think?
I guess I'll get this one started, unless you want to go, Vinny.
No, go for it. I just, that way it just saves me more time to admit that I was wrong again on the time on this stuff.
Vinny, don't admit it. Just don't admit it.
We're gonna double down.
It wasn't that far off. It was like his average time ice is a little bit higher, because the last 2 games he has played on the top line, but his highest time on ice are all like in January on pointless games. And by pointless, I mean literally pointless. He had 0 points.
But I think his quality of ice time is better now compared to before, where we're going to come up with a new stat, quality ice time, and that has gone up dramatically.
I will give a lot of credit to Jonah Aarons from TSR. It's the Ryan McLeod effect.
Yes.
Ever since Quinn's been on that line, that's been his highest. He only has 1 game without a point since being on McLeod's line. I mean, that's the thing that's changed. In the 5 games that he's scored points in recently, Quinn was – so he had a 2-point game against Boston on the 17th. That was he was on a line with Brett Murray and Krebs, I think. Then he had 2 games without a point, one of which was against Winnipeg on the 23rd of March. That was the first day he was on that line. They were the second line that day. Then he scores against Ottawa, also a second line pair. Then they get moved up to the first line, assist against Pittsburgh, 3-point day against Philly, and a 3-point day against Washington. And that's that first line, McLeod, Quinn, Peterka, trio. That's what the numbers are. But time on ice wise, no different than like the past month and a half.
You know what the wild thing is? Quinn has had this like no-show season, and he's still going to end up right around 40 points. And if he can get like another 3 goals, he's going to be around like 17, 18 goals. And you're going to be like, wow, that really wasn't that bad of a season. Like, we know it was horrible, but we'll somehow talk ourselves up and be like, yeah, maybe next year. But talking about Thompson, I'll say this. I was never one of the people that was down on Thompson. I thought a lot of people that were kind of ridiculous. He was playing with injuries last year that definitely hampered his ability. Late in the season when he was healthy, he goes off. He ends up with 29 goals. If you did Thompson's average goals per season the last 3 years entering the season, it was at 38 goals a season. He's at 38 now with 9 games left in the season. He's missed 4 or 5 games this year. So I always thought the talk of Thompson not being that force was way too premature and kind of crazy.
Yeah.
If anything, Thompson's shown he's more than 38. He's a 40-plus goal scorer in the NHL. If he
Easily.
if he was healthy for 82 games, and you're looking at a guy that probably should average around 42, 43 goals a season. That's what he is as a player. And he's 28. He's probably going to be in his prime for at least another couple seasons. Thompson's elite. And if he played on another team that wasn't the Buffalo Sabres, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, the New York Rangers, the Red Wings, or whatever like big name NHL franchise, he would be a star in the league. People would be talking about how great he is. Yes, does he have problems with turnovers? Yeah, sometimes he's a little sloppy with the puck. But he's one of the best in the league at getting the puck in the back of the net. And he's showing it once again. He's on a tear right now. He's been on fire. I know we don't really have a lot mentioned for Tuch, but Tuch's been on fire too.
And that's really been since he's left Thompson's line as well.
That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
You've shown that you can separate Thompson and Tuch and that they both can still play at a very high level. And that should honestly be really encouraging. It's just as encouraging as like Zucker and McLeod and Greenway actually like being players that are going to be a little bit older that are going to help this team going forward. But Thompson's elite. And there really is nothing else to say about him. His shot's elite. He's a great player. And I'm happy he's going to be a force on this team for years to come.
Yeah. And just the whole line stuff too. Vinny, I don't know if you want to hop in real quick.
No, keep going. It's all right. We're good.
But like, I think we talked a little bit ago, but it's like the Sabres just finding the chemistry right now with guys taking the next level, where I feel like the entire year is like, okay, who can we stick with Thompson? And hopefully that line can carry us to a couple wins, where you see Tuch leaving Thompson's side, and they've been glued together for basically since Tuch has been on the Sabres roster. They've been apart a little bit, but they feel like they've always come together. And now Thompson's game has gone to a different level, playing with, Benson or Peterka and who else is on that line. And then Tuch I think, has completely gone to a different level, leaving Thompson, which kind of surprised me. I thought he'd kind of fizzle out, but Thompson, Quinn, finding the back end, I think, is a big thing going forward. Vinny, I don't know if you have more Thompson talk here.
No, I admit I don't have many Thompson thoughts other than
he scores. Cool.
I have no negative thought. It's not that I'm just like, I don't really care about Tage Thompson. The thing I will say is during the Four Nations break and he wasn't on the team, he was a little banged up. And I said, I'm okay with him not playing for Team USA, because if the Sabres are going to try to make a push, you need a healthy Tage Thompson. And Thompson has done what I like. He's done exactly what you've wanted him to do. The rest of the team, coagulated, has not put together the end of season that you want. However, I will say now my tune has changed a little bit to that. Now I think it is inexcusable to leave Tage Thompson off of any international play roster for Team USA. He has to be wearing a red, white, and blue jersey next time America suits up to play international play, because he deserves it. And quite frankly, I think his ability to just continue scoring has shown you that. And I now think that experience, I was of the like, it's okay, just don't let him get hurt or get banged up, I want our guys fresh, to now I think that experience and playing in that type of game is going to be helpful to when we hopefully get to a spot where these games in March, to use Jeremy White's phrase that he used a lot, meaningful games in March. Eventually we got to get back there, and I hope Tage Thompson is still here when we do that. So yes, I think that we have to see him international play. And to put a bullet point on the Tuch thing, this guy is playing really well, Zucker's good, but Krebs' thing is that he's a playmaker, and he hasn't really been able to make plays as consistently maybe since, maybe 2 years ago. I mean, when we first got him, I was like, well, he's young, he's learning, but he's promising, and never really came into form. And I think maybe there's a certain element of that that's helping to a certain extent. Now, I will say this, Tuch does have some more special teams points. He's incredible shorthanded. He's one of the best shorthanded offensive players in the league, which is nuts. Reminds me of a prime David Legwand. But
good pull.
In all seriousness, if at the trade deadline, I know there was some talk of the Sabres moving Tuch, and I would have been bummed if that happened, but I probably wouldn't have thought much of it, because he was quietly having an incredible year. I mean, if you look at the stats right now, he's second on the team in goals with 31. I knew that, but I didn't really know that. I like at the trade deadline, he obviously didn't have 31. He had 20 something at the time, I think 24. Yeah. So like, if you would have told me, yeah, this guy's on pace to have 35 goals this year, I would have said, really? Because it doesn't feel like it at all.
Quietest 31 goal season I've ever seen.
I know it is.
Silent.
He's third on the team in points right now with 57, and he's second on the team in plus minus. And every time I bring up plus minus, I clarify that I understand plus minus is a flawed stat to a certain extent. However, he's behind the godsend Ryan McLeod. So maybe the best acquisition of this year, certainly, and in a while in terms of quickly like contributing in an unexpected way. McLeod tucks right behind him in terms of not being a liability on defense and being able to produce on offense. And so this is, I mean, he's way more integral of a piece than I think I was giving him credit for, especially now, like you said, Mike, that he's not playing with Thompson. He's not that first line winger. He's scoring and producing right now, listed as a third line. He's been switching between center and wing for the past like 2 weeks.
Yeah, Tuck is incredible. He's a great player. And another example of any other team on the league, if they're a playoff team, he's one of those gritty, great players. That's an unbelievable value for his salary. I mean, you're talking about when they traded Jack Eichel away, what did we think we were going to get back in return? We knew we'd get a first-round pick, a prospect, and a player.
Rangers had a lot of untouchables, though. So
yeah, did we expect a guy that was going to get 36 goals in his first full season with the Sabres? Someone that now has a 31-goal season with 9 games left? Like, Tuck could end up with 35 goals again. And he's been consistently a plus player. I know people want to hate on plus minus. I get it. But the fact is the Sabres score more goals when he's on the ice than when he's not on the ice, which is a net positive. And you look at even Peyton Krebs, like, is he what we thought he was going to develop into? No. But he's turning into a reliable fourth liner who has a little bit of grittiness, even though he gets his butt kicked almost every time he gets in a scrap. But he's been all right. And now Noah Ostlund is finally developing in Rochester. Like, we can see, like, this is why I always struggle with the whole Kevyn Adams stuff. Like, if you ask me right now, should he be fired? Yeah, he should probably be fired. The team stinks. But, like, let's not, like, if you isolate individual moves and you're like, what was his return considering the circumstances for Eichel? Not bad. You talk about Reinhart. Now, obviously, nobody knew Reinhart was going to turn into like a 50-goal scorer. But Devin Levi, if you knew you would have a prospect that good at goalie, you would have been like that's to be determined. But at that time, like, good return. You look at McLeod. Everybody's freaking out about Savoy. Well, McLeod now is about to get 50 points and probably 20 goals in his first season when people that saw the trade thought he was a 30-point guy. Zucker, we overpaid him at the time. Now he's turning into one of your best players. And yes, there's certain aspects of when you join a bad team, you have more opportunity. But that's not all entirely true because you saw how Cousins and Quinn never elevated when they had opportunities. So there is an element to, like, some of these moves make sense. They just haven't made enough moves to complement the team. But Alex Tuck is one of those Sabres where if this team wasn't in the middle of a 14-year playoff drought, say this was like 05, 06, or like during that period of time, we would be talking about Alex Tuck like Chris Drury. Like, we would be loving this guy. Like, he's from New York State, 2.5 hours away in Syracuse, an American-born hockey player, has grittiness, gets in front of the net, tips pucks, can finish, vocal, leader, good guy in the community. Like, these are the guys we want playing for the Buffalo Sabres. And the fact that he's showing that he can do it with different groups, it just shows that might be the way to go. Maybe you separate them next year, and that's how you get more scoring variance on your 3 lines. This to me is a good sign. People always say you can't learn anything from games late in the season. You absolutely can. Yeah. This is showing Lindy Ruff, I don't need to just put my 2-star players together at all times to have success from either of them.
100%. And I mean, that's the biggest thing we're seeing those pieces work. Like, I agree with Matt, who agrees with Zach, that, these these additions like Jacob Bernard-Docker has been a really small piece that's kind of elevated this team. I've been singing the praises of Tyson Kozak since he's been in the lineup, of just a guy who does what's asked of him, nothing more, nothing less. And I love him to absolute death. And there's a lot of, sunshine and rainbows right now that we've been talking about, a lot of feel good things. But there's this one glaring dark abyss, the goalie situation. James Reimer has basically, he has taken the net from UPL down the stretch and looked good. UPL, it's not the UPL we've seen in previous years. And we got a little bit of a conundrum on our hand. Duke Dutchy, if you are watching right now, maybe turn the stream off. We'll find something else. But we have a conversation about goaltending for the Sabres end of the season and looking ahead. Vinny, Bunty, I don't know if either of you want to take the reins on this subject right now, but we have a little conundrum right now in net for your Buffalo Sabres.
I won't take the reins, but I will go first because I feel like I have less to say. The first thing I want to say is it's a shame because I was having so much fun starting to buy into the conversation we were just having. I was about to mention that Kozak's only 21 years old. I was about to mention that, again, I would willing to admit a mistake that I was someone who wanted Ostlund traded because I didn't think he was going to fit. Now I can't imagine parting ways with him. He scored again today for Rochester, an absolute snipe. He's done that a million times. Guy's unbelievable. Roseanne right now is probably the MVP of that team down there. Murray is a part of that as well, of course. He's gotten a little quiet as of late, partially because, he got called up to the Buffalo Sabres. And now, of course, we have to talk about the real glaring negative thing, the loud negative thing. And I'm going to tie that into, we've said a lot of names already. Mm-hmm. Jacob Bernard-Docker was the first time we brought up a defenseman on the podcast today. I think the Sabres defense is to blame for some of their issues because, again, we just haven't had that many positive things to say about them. And that's not to say I think that they're completely at fault for like the goaltending issues, but I will give them a percentage of the blame. But hockey's a team sport. I mean, no one goes out there and wins the game by themselves. McDavid looks like he does a lot of the time, and McKinnon does the same thing. And sure, there are times where you might go out there for a shift and take over, but it's a very fluid game. And with that point in mind, what you need your goaltender to do sometimes in a hockey game, and it's hard to quantify this right now, like to make my point, but there are numbers that support this, and I'll look to find them. I feel like the Sabres just don't get bailed out enough from UPL. And again, that's sort of a contradictory statement because it means that they have already failed in some way by like letting this high danger chance go in. But one of the best things you see about the top, I think we'll even take the top 5 goalies in the NHL out of this equation because it's so hard to be a top 5 goalie in the NHL right now. I mean, if you take, Sorokin out of the mix, you take Jake Ottinger out of the mix, you take Hellebuck out of the mix, you take, even save percentage right now, I like the top 5 are maybe not your top 5, but right. So the Rangers, the Islanders, obviously Winnipeg, Dallas, have 4 of the best starting goaltenders in the NHL right now. So take those guys out of the mix. And then put the 5 through like 11 guys. That's where you'd need UPL to be, and he's not really been close. And I think what those guys can do at times is have those really flashy saves to keep you in it, or hey, I'm gonna make this play to bail you out when you need to do that to just stop the bleeding, and that just hasn't really happened this year. I think that's been the biggest problem. And there's been a couple of dribblers that have gone as well that you'd really like to have back, and I think that just happens too much, and that's where the problem lies. UPL's still young, but I am concerned because now this is 2 years in a row that we've kind of had this conversation. This year a little more severe than last year, whereas the year prior, goaltending was the thing that we were pretty satisfied with, especially considering the young age of both of the goalies at the time the Sabres were really using.
So goaltending is a huge concern, and it's a problem. And the way I look at it, I don't want to be too harsh on it because goaltending is kind of weird in hockey. A lot of it is dependent on who's in front of you. Like you could put UPL on Winnipeg and suddenly he's going to have a 9-10 save percentage. Why? Because he has a much better defensive team in front of him. playing a different system, and it's going to be more advantageous to him statistically.
Eric
That
Comrie.
being said, he's been horrible. So, like, goaltending is like running back in the NFL. Yeah, an elite running back might elevate your team, but for the
That's
most
a
part,
great comparison. I love that comparison so
if you're the
much.
5th to like 25th rated running back, like your offensive line has more to do with your success or failure than anything you individually are doing yourself. And this is a team issue. I don't think it's just the defense. A lot of times when we talk about the Sabres goaltending, we keep saying, oh, this defensive group in front of them, they always fail them. No, like the forwards don't get back. The forwards turn the puck over. When you're even like you're seeing the power play, when we give that breakaway goal, it's just stupidity half the time, giving up high danger opportunities. Now, what makes it like right now, UPL has what, like an 885 save percentage, which is horrible by NHL standards.
Not good.
Would it surprise me if he had a 910 save percentage next year? Not at all. Like he could absolutely bounce back. But what UPL has done in his recent stretch is take away the confidence that you can rely on him to be your starting goaltender going forward. And that's the scary thing, because you gave him a contract and you have a person in Rochester that you believe can be the goalie of the future. But if you don't believe that UPL can get it done as the starter, that means you need an insurance policy, which then keeps the goalie of the future in Rochester even longer. And then you kind of have a 3 goalie situation, which we've been doing for like, not this year, but like the previous 2-3 years before that. And not to point anything out, Vinny, last year was actually the good year for UPL. Last year he was in like the top 15.
I've got a concussion. That's all.
You're good, man. No, I knew your point. 2 years ago, UPL was so horrible that he fell to that 3rd goalie situation. He wasn't just he was behind Levi and I believe was it Comrie at that point or Greg Anderson?
Levi was the starter.
But yeah, UPL people were talking about shipping him out. Then last year he was number 3 at the beginning of the year, works his way into the number 1. But it was kind of when Levi wasn't getting it done. Comrie couldn't play. He couldn't even see. So UPL finally had no pressure on him. And that's when he kind of took off. The Sabres couldn't score goals last year, but UPL was great and had amazing saves above expected numbers. This year, he's been near the bottom of the NHL, like near the dead last area in the league. I believe in some of those numbers. I don't have them in front of me. Somebody said something like 87th out of 91. I don't know if that's accurate, but it would support the eye test. And this is the concerning thing. So you can look at this glass half full, glass half empty, however you want to look at it. The Sabres 5-on-5 have been incredible. Power play, penalty kill, horrible. They have metrics that say like this should be a playoff team with how they are 5-on-5. But then you look at their special teams and their goaltending, and that's what's really hurt them so much. And then when you see James Reimer, who's essentially a career backup in the NHL, when you see James Reimer enter games and he looks clearly better than your starting goaltender, that's concerning for your starting goaltender, because Reimer at this point is 37 years old. He doesn't have much high demand around the league. He's a goalie that's going to be right around a 900 save percentage, right around to 90%. And when he looks like he's a class above UPL, that tells me that you can't go into next year trusting UPL. So the dilemma the Sabres have, I think, is this. We already know that Levi has proven what he's going to be in Rochester. What do you do at goalie going into next season? Do you hope that UPL just bounces back? Or do you put yourself in a situation where you bring another guy like Reimer and say, hey, UPL, if you don't turn this around, you're the backup. And if you don't get it done early in the season, you're trade bait for somebody else. And the last thing I will say, Jeff Merrick was talking about how UPL could be this next version of Linus Ullmark. And that is such crap that this whole like Sabres players leave and they become the best versions of themselves is such crap, because guys like Eichel and Reinhart, they were already poised to become great players. They got put in better situations on winning teams, winning cultures, and then they got to be great. Let's not act like every Sabres player that leaves turns into some star. The Sabres wanted Ullmark back. He got tired of the losing, and he decided to go somewhere else where he knew he could win. He was already a great goaltender. He put up good numbers, and people are saying UPL is better. Ullmark was like a 912 save percentage in Buffalo. UPL outside of last year is rarely, for his career, he's probably not even a 9.
Yeah, I mean the UPL stuff, like, I mean a lot of it is, I mean, you talk timely saves, and I think that is kind of the big difference. I mean, last year there's so many games. I feel like every time he played the Rangers in Madison Square Garden, especially, he would just be the best goalie on earth and come up with really timely saves. And I'm drawing a blank on the game, but it was a couple of weeks ago. He let in that one from the corner in the third period, and like the wind just fell out of the sails. And I feel like it's been a lot of that this year with UPL, where the Sabres will give up good chances, they'll make good saves, and then there's just that one that gets in and just kills all the momentum the team has. And I still think he's a good goalie, can be a great goalie in a rough stretch right now. And there's, in my mind, no reason to cut wind of that, like get rid of that right now, because that can return. Like, goaltending is such a weird position. Like, I don't want to get too far in the weeds with the goaltending, but UPL's been so aggressive, so out of his crease. And I feel like every game there's a screenshot of him just like sprawled out of the crease with a wide open net behind him. And I feel like last year he was much more contained in his post. He's a big guy. He doesn't have to move that much. And I think he's trying to do a little bit too much at times, especially when the Sabres are a little bit everywhere defensively. So I'm hoping, over the offseason that changes. He should have the reins to start the year next season. Quick thing that Zach said, will we see a GM firing changes offseason? I can't imagine the Sabres doing anything drastic this offseason to change what's here, whether that be, changing things in net, changing Kevin Adams. Like, that doesn't seem like it's in the cards at all for the Sabres. If anything, he would just take a different position with the organization. He is going to, in my opinion, still have the reins of the Sabres. I don't know if you guys disagree with that at all, but
I think he gets one more offseason.
100%.
They wouldn't have let him trade Dylan Cousins without having assurance that he was going to be the GM for the offseason. Now, things can change, but they're playing good hockey right now. I think Terry's going to let him finish out his contract, and if they find a way to make the playoffs, he stays. If they miss it again, that'll be it.
100%.
I agree. And I think another point too, and this goes into somewhat like Zach said the exact same thing. Like, not every player that leaves Buffalo does go off and have immediate sustained success elsewhere. You mentioned Middlestat. Middlestat's already on his second team since leaving Buffalo. I'm not really sure what Bowen Byram's spot is going forward with the team. I know there's some people that want him to stay, some people that maybe think that he's not going to be worth the money that we're probably going to have to, as if I'm going to be paying for him. The Sabres are probably going to have to pay to keep him. And if his role is there, like if he's a sustainable, like his type of play is sustainable. So on that point, I still think that Byram Middlestat trade, the Sabres right now are up on that trade. And if you trade Byram, then maybe you're up even more, depending on what the return on him is. Another example is Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner was pretty good in Carolina, scored in spurts, came to Buffalo, was one of our best goal scorers and an electric player to watch. And quite frankly, he was always smiling, which made it more fun to watch Sabres games because there wasn't many reasons to smile continuously. Then he goes obviously to Edmonton and isn't really playing all that well. Now, of course, there's those years where he was playing on the fourth line that he wasn't really producing. And there's a longer conversation to be had about hockey players' play styles and their roles in different organizations and how that fits into their success, especially when they switch teams. So Skinner's another example of just he was successful on the Sabres. And Ryan McLeod is the most recent example of that. He came here, is good. And, and Savoy hasn't been, he's still young, obviously, but right now you're looking at that trade going, hey, yeah, we're net positive on that trade. Jacob Bernard-Daka right now looks solid on the blue line. Obviously, Norris has been hurt. We know about his injury history. And even in the Middlestat situation, too, there's been a little more time. Like, we reacted like 8 days after that happened and thought, well, this is going to be interesting. Now more time has passed and you have a larger sample size. So I don't want to rush to these conclusions. But even to put a bow on that goaltending point, Ullmark right now is 31 for the record. And Bunty, this is just to cement something that you said. Ullmark in his seasons with the Sabres His first year in 2015-16, he played 20 games, which still is like an outlier compared to how goalies play usually. That year, he played those 20 games at a 2.6 goals against average and a 913 save percentage. The following year, only played one game. The year after that, only 5. Then in 2018-19, he played 37 games. He started 34 of them. He had a 905 save percentage and a 311 goals against average. The year after that, a 269 goals against average and a 915 save percentage. And then 20 games in 2020, 2021, where he had a 917 save percentage and a 263 goals against average before obviously going to the Bruins, 917 save percentage and a 245 goals against average. And his really good year, of course, with the Vezina, 938 and a 189 goals against average in 22-23. He was a good goalie. His best seasons are way better than UPL's right now, and his worst seasons aren't nearly as bad. UPL's best season, 21-22, he played 9 games, 917 save percentage and a 274 goals against average. Pretty small sample size. 23-24 was his good years, a 257 goals against average and a 9.1 save percentage. That's all right. You'd love for that right now. But the year prior to that, and this year, he was 892 in 2023 with a 361 goals against average. And this year, an 885 save percentage and a 323 goals against average. So, he's bookending that good year with 2 genuinely not good years statistically on just the baseline level stats. And obviously, Bunty, you referenced the goals saved above expected and below expected, which is that number that kind of leads into those like bailout saves or those timely saves. If you're not expected to save something, it's a goal saved above expected, right? If a shot is a wide open net, you dive over, save it. That's going to help you in that category. And if it's a shot that goes right into your stomach that you probably should save and it squeaks through and goes in, that's a knock in that category. That's exactly that stat that I was talking about of how, it just seems like there's dribblers going in and not the timely saves to bail you out when you need them. And all of that leads into, this is just a difficult conversation that I think is, of course, going to be had. And we'll have that more, of course, in the offseason. But just wanted to bookend it with some numbers that this time I know I'm not wrong on because I read them off the website.
And that's the concerning thing about UPL. Now, the big difference between UPL and Linus Ullmark was the Sabres were more patient on Ullmark as far as development. He really didn't get his go ahead in Buffalo until he was around 24, 25 years old, while UPL has been getting it for the last 2-3 years at the age of 22, 23, 24, around that point. So the counterpoint to some people would be that UPL has been thrown into the fire and really hasn't gotten the fair development time. The problem I have with that, though, a little bit is that's been my point the whole time, but we're not seeing progress in his game. He's still doing the stupid things that he did 2-3 years ago. Is he a little bit more consistent in some ways? Yes, but he's still getting himself out of position all of the time. And when you're looking at a young team that's going to turn over the puck, that's going to make mistakes, that is mistake prone, you need a goalie that can step up and help you out in those moments, not the goalie that's going to allow the weak goals that put you in even further trouble. And it'd be one thing if UPL was a backup and you had a veteran starter to match with him and maybe do a 50-50 split. But no, they're doing UPL being the main guy with the 37-year-old, 38-year-old veteran goalie being the split. And the truth of it is they really have 2 goalies in the same spot because they want Levi to be the goalie up in Buffalo too. And he's showing the same issues when he's up in Buffalo as well. It's lack of confidence. It's inexperience. It's not being ready for the job. And as much as goaltending is like running back in football, where the team in front of you makes a difference, that's where you need some experience. And the problem is analytics say it's stupid to pay a top-end goalie $7-8 million just to get that high-end production, because the difference between that high-end goalie and the mid-tier goalie is minimal and not worth that $4 million difference. The problem is they're paying UPL to be a mid-tier goalie, like a middle-of-the-pack goalie in the NHL, but he's producing like a 27th, 28th, 29th, even lower NHL starting goalie. So if he produced like they paid him to produce, the Sabres would be fine, and they would pair him up with Reimer. They would get by. The problem is UPL has been one of the worst goalies in hockey this year, and that is why you have this dilemma. Do you go into a season where your job is probably on the line as a general manager with an uncertain goalie, or do you make a move? I will tell you this. If UPL would have given me faith in Rochester that he could step up, maybe I would have a little bit more confidence. But he stunk in Rochester. He stunk at almost every single pro level since he's been in the Sabres organization. And I know Gatesy, Rochester was bad defensively in front of him, but how many times are we going to say, well, these teams are bad defensively in front of you? James Reimer is playing in front of the same team that's bad defensively in front of him. And you know what? James Reimer has a 90 save percentage in Buffalo. So that doesn't explain a 1.5% difference in save percentage, which in hockey, that's massive. That's a huge difference. So you have a veteran backup that looks like an adequate starter. To me, I think the play is, and I know they're not going to do this, I think you have to get someone that has starting capability and not some unproven backup from another team, not some veteran goalie that's 37, 38 years old. I think you need to go out, get a goalie and on like a 1-year deal. And because if you're not going to spend to the cap anyway, which they haven't in recent years, what's the big deal if you spend $5 million on a goalie that you at least know can save a puck once in a while? Not Eric Comrie, not Craig Anderson, not these different guys around. Like, get me a goalie that you know you can get some results on. Yeah, I don't think they will, but that's what I would do, because I don't have faith in Levi or UPL in a 50-50 mix. And let's not act like James Reimer, based on one average season, deserves to be in this picture either.
Get him going. Like, I mean, my whole thing with goaltending is less is more so much of the time. And Bunty made a great point of comparing UPL, how he's playing this year, to Levi, where they're doing too much in net and it's costing the team, where, you know, UPL is a big guy, doesn't have to do genuinely stay in his crease, stay composed, make this timely saves. Like the Sabres, you know, if they're giving up backdoor goals, that's not on the goaltender. Like, I want my goaltender to stop that shot on the 2-on-1. If that shot's getting in, we have a lot of issues. And right now, I mean, that's kind of where I think the issues fall with UPL, is just doing that too much, trying to do too many things. And I don't know if that's on the goaltending coach. I know Carson Hayek put out that tweet a little bit ago, just like the goaltending stats since he's been the coach. I think something needs to change there. We'll see what Levi does on that Rochester run. Quickly, before we wrap things up, kind of talk Rochester looking forward. Zach's comment here. I mean, yeah, I think Bo Byram did talk about wanting to be that number one defenseman on his team. That's not going to happen with Erasmus Dahlin here, Owen Power. So if they can use that to get someone else in who can fill out that role, be that right-handed partner for Owen Power, I think that's Kevin Adams' biggest priority this summer, is that Owen Power partner. And I've liked how Samuelson's played the past couple of weeks, where I think his offense has been a bit better. He's been less noticeable with how bad he's been. There's times where it shows, but it's been a slight improvement on that front. And fellas, Rochester, end of the season goals. We have a handful of games left. Rochester's doing great things. Vinny, I want to hear you talk about that. Osland, 4 straight games with goals. He's been a guy that's taken that next step. For fans who might be checked out of the Sabres and might be hesitant of buying in on, watching Rochester games, getting bought in on these players, who should they watch? Why should they watch? And why is this Rochester team so fun to watch right now?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably talk for a while about why that is. So part of that, the answer to that is because, first of all, the Americans are more than likely going to be hosting home playoff games, plural. Yep. They're in a very good spot right now to avoid the play-in round, but they haven't even clinched a playoff spot yet. However, they're 4th in the entire AHL, and 8 of the top 9 teams in the AHL have already clinched a spot in the postseason. The only team that hasn't is the Amherst. I just said they're 4th. You're probably wondering how that makes any sense whatsoever. Well, the reason is that's because they're in the North, which is, by mathematics, the most competitive division in the AHL. They're 2nd right now in that division to Laval, the farm team for the Montreal Canadiens, and Laval is the best team in the American Hockey League right now. However, the Amherst are only 3 points back of them. There's 8 games left to play, and they do play Laval at home on Friday, March 11th. So get some tickets, go to that game, make it loud inside Blue Cross Arena, because that's going to be a huge game for the standings. The Amherst will need that one. They can, not only can they clinch a playoff spot before then, which they most likely will, that can put them in 1st place in the entire league, which is crazy to think that they might be the last team in the top 10 in the entire league, which that's not like more than 10 teams make the playoffs, but 10 teams are going to clinch a playoff spot before the Amerks probably. And yet the Amerks might finish the regular season in first place. That's mathematically just doesn't seem to make any sense. However, they are really, I think they're good all the way around. Levi has been unbelievable. He's got 6 shutouts already this year. His numbers are really good. And that's one of the reasons that the Amerks do have success, because he does bail them out a lot. Maybe not a lot, but he does it. And so he bails them out, then they get the puck. The defensemen are quick puck-moving defensemen. They're probably the fastest team, not only on the blue line, but with the forward group especially in the AHL. They got a lot of speed. They can be physical, which is one area that they maybe were lacking in last year. The Syracuse crunch in the playoffs kind of pushed them around a little bit, and that's part of the reason they end up dropping that series. They're more physical this year, and that I think is really going to help them. Brett Murray is that physical, well-rounded player that can also score. He's got 25 goals, which is second on the team. Isak Rosén is just under a point per game right now. Zach Metza's third on the team in points. Quickly to jump back to the Sabres, I can't wait for this guy to hopefully one day wear a blue and gold uniform. I think he might be one of the missing pieces on this Sabres blue line. I like watching Zach Metza play. Rathbone was another name I mentioned last time we recorded. He got called up to play for the Sabres. And yeah, Zach said my next point. Brandstrom is another great trade deadline acquisition for the Sabres. He's been lights out on offense for Rochester. The guy, I wish I had half the shot that guy has. He can pick corners like nothing else. I feel like he should be a sniper, and that he should be the one breaking Gretzky's goal scoring record instead of whoever this Ovechkin guy is. But in all seriousness, each element of their game from a hockey standpoint is exciting. Their power play is successful. Their penalty kill is solid. It's a little above halfway in the AHL right now. 5-on-5, they're good. They're fast. They create scoring chances. Levi makes exciting saves. The defensemen step up into the play. They make things happen. They're fast. So they get back on the back check. They do everything well. Today, they lost in overtime to the crunch. And each team played 3 games in 3 nights. Amherst kind of lost their legs at the end. It happens. They won the previous 2 games and got a point today. They got 5 out of 6 points. Again, they're going to be playing home playoff hockey games. That barn is great if you've never been there. I highly encourage everybody to go watch playoff games because it is a fun Amherst team to watch. All 3 phases right now give you reasons to be excited. So plenty to look forward to down in Rochester, and a lot of players, again, that make it worth watching.
I think what's nice about Rochester, and I'll talk quickly about them and then finish up with some Sabres stuff after you guys talk, is that they have the ability to be patient with the guys that they currently have there. They don't have that top-end guy that you're rushing to the NHL. Isak Rosén is obviously great, and he's split time in Buffalo, really hasn't made a presence with the Sabres yet, but has the potential to grow and not be rushed in the NHL. Noah Ostlund, after being hurt and a slow start to the season, is really coming on strong right now. You look at Anton Wahlberg, he's going to be a solid player, but he needs time. He has physicality. Konsta Helenius, already in the pros as a teenager.
They're the 2 youngest players on the team. Wahlberg and Helenius are. It's crazy.
And then Devin Levi is absolutely killing it. And I think what is encouraging is I feel like for so long, Rochester's been, and this isn't the recent years necessarily, but for so long they were kind of poor to where the Sabres were crappy too. So there was no reason to keep them in Rochester because might as well just bring them up to the Sabres. They need them. Now they're at that point where, like, with Kulik up and Benson up, and you already have Quinn and you got some veterans, they're finally giving these players the proper development that they need, which is turning into success in the American Hockey League, but it's also not rushing these guys, which I think is going to be good for the long-term future of the Sabres, because you need to create that winning culture in the minors and then carry that into the pros. To get a lot of these young kids in the Sabres right now would be detrimental to their futures. And I think what the Sabres also have done too much of over the years is they've been drafting the same type of players: speed, skill, not much physicality. And what that's often led to with the Sabres is the inability to really play different styles of hockey. If you can slow down the skill and the speed, the Sabres haven't had a counter punch. What they're starting to develop a little bit in Rochester is they have some different types of guys down there. And I think that is an encouraging sign, because even though it's this drought is horrible for the Sabres, you can see that there are some plans in place to kind of change up what's going on in Buffalo based on what you're seeing in Rochester. And that gives me hope that if the Sabres can ever build a winning culture and get some more veterans and kind of foster some more winning, that they'll be able to put a better system in place for drafting, development, and then bringing guys in when they're ready, as opposed to what they have been doing in the last decade.
Exactly. And it reminds me so much of those early 2000s Amerks teams where you look back at those rosters, you see guys who are going to be impactful for the Sabres in years down the line, your Pominvilles, Roys. And I think that they get that experience in these playoff games. And now, Sabres fans who maybe haven't watched a Rochester game this year or in decades, watch a playoff game, see how these guys play under pressure. And everything I see online about these guys over the course of the season, how well they're, rounding out their games and gelling. And, I think of like Ender on Twitter, who just, says these praises for these players who have shown great success for the Sabres this year, like Tyson Kozak. We knew Kulik could be great, but he is, crafted his game, I think, a bit more from last year to this year to be a good NHL player. We've seen Roseanne have some flashes this year. So drive down the 90, get to Rochester, wave to Vinny, watch the Amerks play because those crowds look great. And fellas, wrapping up with some final Sabres thoughts. Handful of games left. Why are you watching games? Why should fans watch the games? What are you looking forward to? And, just kind of put a bow on the hour here, the millions of people watching live to the Crossing Swords podcast sponsored by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. Who wants to lead us off here on their final thoughts?
I'll lead off, and I'll try to be quick. I really don't care what happens to round up the season. None of these final games matter to me that much. I hope they play hard. I hope they continue some of the recent momentum. But other than Tage getting to 40, McLeod getting to 50, Peterka getting to 60 points, I don't really care much besides some players getting their milestones. What I'm going to tell you is a plan I have, thoughts I have on what they can do to make this team good next year, and why I think some of the things that we've seen in the last couple months is going to be encouraging about the future. I'm going to be quick with this, but there's a lot of reasons why Sabres fans should be optimistic, even if they currently are. Number one, Kevin Adams' job is probably on the line next year. If they don't make the playoffs, he's probably out of Buffalo. That creates sense of urgency. Trading Cousins was a big move because it finally showed that he finally has given up on his youth movement. It showed that Cousins, Quinn, that's not the answer to the second line. We have to get things fixed. We needed to bring in experience. Josh Norris is a proven player. That brings in some reliability. That's what this team needed more of in recent years. But what else did he do during the trade deadline? He re-signed, he extended Jordan Greenway and Jason Zucker. This team needed veterans, and those guys both bring aspects that this team needs. Zucker is a veteran leader. He still has some goal-scoring touch. He's been their best player in the power play, while Jordan Greenway brings some physicality. Now, you may ask me, why is Greenway, why is Zucker, why do they matter? They're third liners. They're not significant. Well, they are significant because if you let those guys go, you're going to have to replace that skill set in free agency, and you're going to pay even more money for it. And for a team that doesn't like to spend money, getting guys back on fair contracts, that's a good thing because it creates less voids in their roster that they need to replace going into next year. Well, I already mentioned the salary cap. They have all this room in the salary cap. Well, what's also good, you look at their top nine. You have guys like Thompson, Peterka, Tuck. You got Norris. You got Benson, Kulik. You got McLeod, Greenway, Zucker, Quinn. You're flush with guys in your top three lines right now, which means you don't have much room for guys to move into the lineup. What does that do? That makes players expendable. You could trade a couple guys and get somebody that might be a top six talent from someone else because they're going to get a couple players back in return. We mentioned the prospect pool in Rochester. Most of those guys aren't going to even be close to being in Buffalo in the next year. So now you have guys in Buffalo that are trade expendable, but you also have prospects that are trade expendable. And at the same time, you're probably going to get a top 5 pick, which will only add to your trade value. And you have an offensive defenseman in Bo Byram, who doesn't really fit necessarily in some of the long-term plans. If you want a different type of defenseman, You could use Bo Byram as a trade chip to get a defensive defenseman that is more reliable in your own zone. That might be offer a different thing while still keeping power and hoping on his continued growth. You got the salary cap. You got trade bait. If you want to go after Pedersen, Byram and a prospect, maybe a pick, you could get that done. Maybe you don't even need to give all that up. You want to take a stab at Marner. You have all the money in the world. Yeah, he's probably never going to come to Buffalo. You want to throw him $14 million? See if he says no. Well, I mean, if you offer Marner $2 million more than anyone else, I'm sure he'll come down from Toronto and come to Buffalo. He almost turned them down the first time many years ago. So there are so many things on the table where if this wasn't the Buffalo Sabres, if this was the Detroit Red Wings, the Chicago Blackhawks, the New York Rangers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, any other team in the NHL that didn't have a 14-year playoff drought and you had a different GM, people would be saying, I would really want to be the GM of that team. You have 2 number 1 overall pick defensemen, one that's entering the prime of his career, another one that is young that's going to figure it out. You have the draft capital. You have the salary cap. You have trade chips. You have so much clay that you can move and turn into something. So long story short, they'll probably screw it up and miss the playoffs for a 15th consecutive season next year. But they have every resource available to turn things around next year. And they have the one thing they really haven't had in recent years that I'm surprised they haven't, and that's a sense of urgency. Because for whatever reason, Kevin Adams knew he was safe the last couple years. I don't think he gets that sense anymore, and that's why he traded Dylan Cousins at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I admit I don't have many. I sat there you made a very lucid response, and I agree with a lot of the things you said, especially the first thing, which is I have no idea what I want to watch the last handful of games for, other than just to watch them and watch hockey and watch the Sabres and gather information. I don't have a thing that I'm looking forward to inherently about those games. I think I admit that I've kind of turned my attention to Rochester. I want to see if they're going to get into first place. I want to watch Zachary Metsa play again. This is a guy. I hope that I've been wrong about a lot of things today. I hope that if I can be right about one thing, it's that Zachary Metsa is going to be a good defenseman at the NHL level for the Sabres someday. Maybe it's not next year. Maybe it's not the year after that. But I think he's going to be good. But I've turned my attention to them. And so I think to a certain extent, I'm going to watch the Sabres just to see if I can figure out where I might, in my own head, see where some of those players fit. And, Mike said it. I think there is a vision. There's never not a vision. I don't think anyone's ever been the GM of a professional sports team and just been like, we'll see what happens. But Adams clearly has a vision. You can see now, I think for the first time in a while, what they're trying to
Yes.
They're always, like I said, there's always that vision. I think certain people can kind of assume, well, it seems like they're trying to do this. This regime seems like they prioritize this. And I think for the first time now, and it's tough because the NHL has so much turnover, especially from the head coaching position. It's hard to get a team to have that person in the same spot for a while where you see that consistency. You see them start to really take hold of their roster. And Richard Walsh, who does Canisius basketball color commentary on ESPN Plus, said that when he was an athletic director, he always said to the coaches, he needs to see improvement by year 3. Year 1, he knows you're always going to be, sort of pulling the short straw. You're behind the 8 ball a little bit. You're a new coach, the new program. Year 2, you want to see some improvement, but that's the first full year you have to really dig your teeth in. And then by year 3, you need to see returns on your investments, not only from year 1, but from that year 2. And now having comfort with the program, really starting to see growth with how everything's going to work. And in the NHL, I feel like that 3-year window is now a bit long even for struggling teams. So with Adams, I think we now can finally see at the beginning of the process, we saw X. Now we see these draft picks and we see how they fit into the system. And we see people like me be wrong about players like Ostlund, right? And that has given me reason to say, okay, I can kind of see the vision here. And now because there's time to see these investments pay off, unfortunately, time is something the Sabres don't have a lot of, although they have all the time in the world, I guess. Like, if you have the longest playoff drought in the NHL, you're the only one in control of that, right? But while you don't have a lot of time, it's good to see that time has now kind of formulated some semblance of a vision being accessible, if you will, to the general public, like us and like myself.
100%. And I really liked, like, you guys hit the nail, like, on the absolute head of all of that. And especially, like, that vision seems there now, where I feel like every other year it's kind of been, okay, Kevin Adams kind of has what previous GMs have built and kind of, making moves that had to be made because, a Eichel wants out, these things that kind of had to happen. We see with the Dylan Cousins move, he goes on the offensive there of making a move that had to happen because it needed to happen in a hockey sense, that it just wasn't working here. And he made that move. And now you have this draft capital. You're seeing, players you trade for find success here. And Ryan McLeod signed Jason Zucker. Of the pieces are, there. And the reason I want to watch is, what happens when this team gets punched in the mouth? We've seen in previous, even this year, they go on that 13-game losing streak. They can't, get watered out of the sinking ship. Yesterday, they have the wheels fall off against the Flyers. It's going to happen over the course of the season. Today, they put up 8 goals against the top team in the East, the Washington Capitals, in the league. And you see, like, that is, a major point of, okay, they're going to, show up the next day and be a totally different team. You're going to have games where you don't play your best. How are they going to respond to that? We saw that today. Gentlemen, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap things up here on the Cross Swords podcast?
I guess all I would say is I don't think this is us getting fooled into believing into them again. I would have said the same thing about the potential to turn around this team if they lost the last 15 games of the season. And it's because they do truly have the capital as far as a potential top 5 pick, salary cap, trade assets, to really go and have an aggressive offseason and put together the pieces that they want to turn this around. Everybody always says, jokes about the palm trees. Kevin Adams has everything that he needs to not have the palm trees be a problem this summer. Yeah. So I guess all I'm hoping for is put it to action. Your job is on the line. Show that urgency that this fan base has been asking for you to show for the last couple of years. And I think now that you're finally seeing a variety of players on this team, like a McLeod, like a Greenway, you're seeing guys start to step up. And the last thing I'll say too, Rasmus Dahlin had a meeting with Adams where he basically demanded, I need to know the vision of this team. Where are we going? And a lot of people would say, well, it's all like PR manufactured, that he said he was pleased with it. He didn't go out and say he was pleased by it. That's inside reporting that people connected to Rasmus Dahlin said that he was okay. He was pleased with the plan. I see a different level of buy-in from this team since those reports came out. That's encouraging to me. That means something. And a lot of people want to say Rasmus Dahlin, he's going to want out just like Jack Eichel. He is a totally different guy. If the Sabres ruin Dahlin, I'm going to be really upset because Dahlin has that level of buy-in that is completely different than Eichel. And yes, all young players are immature and it takes time for things to build. But I see the want in this young group. If they can just get them some additional pieces, I'm not going to ever pick playoffs again until they do it. But there are reasons to be optimistic. I'm just praying to God that Kevin Adams doesn't screw this up.
Yeah. And like previous off seasons, we're not, hoping for anomalies where they exceed expectations. We know where those expectations are. We know what they need to get to that next level. The pieces are there. And seeing, Dahlin, seeing the players take that ownership, I think is the biggest thing of setting that culture. We look at the Bills with McDermott, that Bills need that culture change. They had it. In hockey, that starts in the locker room, starts with your players. We see that on the ice now with the guys who've been ghosts most of the season, in a Quinn or, stretches from other guys. They're there. They're making impacts, and they're taking that ownership of their game. We're seeing Lindy Ruff bench Zach Benson against the Flyers for taking dumb penalties. He comes out today, plays a lot better. Like we see, the consequences of those actions. We're seeing repercussions. Hopefully they can build on it these last couple of games, but mainly it's in that offseason. What are they going to look like come October? What's the team going to look like? What's Adam going to do? Urgency, urgency, urgency. Bunty, you said it earlier. And folks, been here, hour 15. Thank you for spending your Sunday night with us at Mike_Bunt, at VCristiano3. We are the Crossing Swords podcast brought to you by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. Thank you to the near 3,000 of you watching live with us. Thank you, Seth, Zach, Matt, commenting all night long. We're the Crossing Swords podcast brought to you by Batavia Downs Gaming and Hotel. Bunty, I'm not going to say it, but we'll see you guys in the future.